Hey everyone, welcome to another $1,000 strap search. I've got my $1,000 in singles here and I'm about to show you what I found. But before I do, let's talk about this week's tip. Actually, this week I'm going to show you part of this week's tip. So what I want to do is I want to get my 1,000 out of the way. And yeah, we'll do a quick little thing. I happen to have found a deck of cards, Blue Bicycle for anybody that cares. And yeah, normally when you have a deck of cards like this, you keep them stored in a box like that, or you put a rubber band around it. You do that to make sure that all the cards not only are there, but that all the backs of the cards face one way and all the fronts of the cards face the other. So that way, when you get the deck of cards, you can go right away into playing whatever game you wanted to play. Now, there's nothing more annoying than when you open that box and find somebody has gone through and flipped the cards in every different direction. When the cards are all mixed up like that, then you have to spend the first 10 minutes sorting out all the cards. You end up with some cards that are front to back, some cards that are back to front. I bet you there's even some in here there's back to back like that. Now I can spend the next 5 minutes sorting these cards, but that never impresses anybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to give this the little shake like that, and that should take the whole deck and put it right back the way it goes, with all the backs facing one way and all of the fronts facing the other. So what did that have to do with collecting currency? Pay attention. Pay attention to the details. That's what that has to do with currency. I will show you a little more when we get to my special note. But for now, let's take a peek at what I found in this week's search. The first bill that I found, this one I thought was interesting because it starts off with 31415. That's pi, 3.1415. The next digit is actually a 9. Off the top of my head, I can't rattle off anymore. But that is the closest I've ever found to finding a note that has pi on it. 3.1415. Like I said, 9, and then I'd have to look up the other two. But if I ever get that far, I will. So far, this is as close as I've come. To me, that's a keeper. All right, I did find some trinaries. This is 1s, 2s, and 6s. Good shape on that bill. 1s, 3s, and 7s on this one. Not so good shape. 1s, 2s, and 3s here. This one is 0s, 2s, and 7s. Almost a radar. This one is quads. It's got quad 6s right here. Oh, that's not quads. That's 5. 5 7s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in a row. 5 7s on that particular note, and it's in really good shape. I did find some stars. 2017. Another 2017. This one's in pretty good shape. It's got a crease in the middle, but the paper's good. This one's 2013. Let's see, still 2013. And I did find some older notes. This one here is from 1999. And then a 1981. Usually I spot that. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, so I see that signature and I know it is an 81. Then, of course, you can look a lot closer and see that it says 1981 right there. And the oldest note in the group, normally the 81 would have been it, but this also had a 1977. So yeah, 1977 was the oldest note from the group. Not very often I find a note from the 80s and the 70s, and when you think about it, there was notes from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s as well. So yeah, quite a few decades represented in this particular search. All right, so that takes care of my search. What did I pull out this week? Well, I don't collect a lot of foreign currency, but on occasion I will collect stuff that gets my attention. And this got my attention. For those of you who are outside or that are inside the United States, this is a Canadian $1 bill. If you are from Canada, you know that these don't exist anymore. Not only did they do away with pennies in Canada, they also did away with $1 bills. So why do I have this particular one? Not because they got rid of dollars, but because of what year this one happens to be. If you look dead center, you'll notice that it says Ottawa 1954. What makes this bill so unique is that the year 1954 is the first year that Queen Elizabeth was featured on the currency. Before that, it was King George. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Canadian currency, let me just point out a couple things for you. In Canada, and I know this from watching the movie Canadian Bacon starring John Candy, anything written down has to be written not only in English, but in French as well. So you see that it's got $1 in English, it's got $1 in French, it has Bank of Canada here in English, it has Bank du Canada, Bank, I'm not even going to attempt it, but it says it there in French. Even when you zoom in, we'll pay to the bearer on demand, and it says it there again in French as well. And then one of the other cool things that it did, it says $1 here, it says $1 here, one, un, one, un. And then they even did the serial numbers. If you look on this side, you've got the serial number written in English here, and then on this side, they wrote the numbers in French. So on both sides of the bill, you have English and French. I'll just pause for a second for the two people that are going to giggle about that. If I take a look at the back of this, that's definitely an interesting portrait. Not what you'd expect on the back of a bill. It looks like a dirt road, a cornfield. You got a couple electric poles, utility poles there. Just an interesting looking bill, generally speaking, of course. Now, why do I have one of these, and why should you care? Well, this particular bill, like I said, was put out in 1954, and this is the bill that most people have. It's not the bill that most people want. I'm going to show you the bill that most people actually want. This one is not nearly in as nice a shape, and if you look, it's fairly similar, except for the creases, but this particular note is known as the Devil's Head, or the Devil's Face. Now, that is not because Queen Elizabeth is on there. That's not the reason for it. However, it does have to do with the picture they decided to use. Now, if you look, and I will zoom way in on this, if you look at her hair, right behind her ear, you can see what is said to be the face of the devil. Let me grab a pen here, something to point with. Here we go. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. Right here, this area here, if you look just right, you can see the mouth, you can see the nose. The nose is very prominent. That's one eye socket, that's another eye socket. Here are horns. You can see the image of the devil. At least that is what people thought they were able to see in this particular image of the Queen. Now, you may wonder, why would they do that? Why would they put the image of the devil on the Queen on the very first note she ever appeared on? And truth be told, all this is an exact replica of the portrait that they used for the Queen themselves. The person who did the engraving did a spectacular job as far as corresponding the highlights in black and white compared to the color photo that he was going off of. And it just so happened that after the fact, if you close one eye and tilt your head just right, you can pretty much spot the image of the devil right behind the Queen's ear. Now, of course, we couldn't have that, the Queen couldn't have that be, so they did reprint the notes, and when they chose to reprint the notes, what they did was they darkened the area behind her ear so that you could no longer see that particular image. But if we go side by side on these two, then you can definitely see that there is a face here, and there is no face here. Once again, the nose is where I always start. Once I spot the nose, then the rest of the face kind of comes into play. Before you identify that, you can do a lot of winking and head scratching to try to find it, but the nose itself, right next to the earring, you've got that nose, and that's where it all comes in. Let me just see how close I can get this without it all blurring so you can see it exactly. Once again, the nose right here. All right, so one of the few pieces of foreign currency I own, a 1954 Devil's Head $1 Canadian note. I have the before, the original, which isn't in the greatest of condition, and I've got the after. To be honest, I was I bought the after before I bought the before. And once I realized that this one didn't have the image on it, I understood why I only paid $3. This one was a little bit more. Not much because it wasn't in the greatest of shape. But they did make these in $1, $2, $5, $10, $20, $50, $100, and I think even all the way up to $1,000. Yes, all of those can get pricey, and I actually have some of them on the way. But I finally got both versions, the Devil's Head and the edited version. So I wanted to make sure that I put these out right away. So yeah, not all foreign currency is boring. There's a lot of interesting things that are out there. One other interesting thing about this is that this is paper money, which is something else that Canada no longer has. Canada has now gone to the polymer, the plastic money, which probably isn't a bad idea. I'm kind of surprised we haven't thought about doing that here in the U.S. Anyway, that's what I got for you guys this week. 1954 $1 Canadian bill, the Devil's Head. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next week.